Welcome friends, I'm glad that you found this video or this video found you. I'm here today to talk to you about Constantinople and more specifically the year 718. Now the siege of 718 was between the Muslim Arab people of the Umayyad Caliphate and the Byzantium capital of Constantinople. Now Constantinople was a trading hub for the entire world at this time, but especially through the connection that it made between Europe and Asia. In terms of trade, Constantinople was also incredibly unique geographically because of the way that it sat on a peninsula surrounded by water on three sides. This truly opened up trade by way of sea. And while this was incredibly beneficial to the economy of the Byzantine Empire, it also made the Byzantine Empire a prize for any siege that could take it because of the benefits that it would reap. Alright, that's enough for the whole geography lesson for right now, but I promise you we're going to get back to that later in the lesson. I know that all of you are very excited for that, as am I. But for right now, let's actually talk about the events of 718 and the siege of Constantinople. So the siege of 718 came at the end of a 20-year Arab struggle in which they occupied the borders of Byzantium. They led numerous attacks on the Byzantine Empire. This can be recognized by plainly just looking at a historical reference from Jonathan Harris. Jonathan Harris wrote Constantinople, capital city of Byzantium, and he kind of led the way for me in my research as I looked into this. And he describes the attack as being led by Maslama ibn Abd al-Malik, who is the brother of the Umayyad Caliphate. Now I know everyone is super interested in who Maslama is, so that's why I've included a picture of him here on the next slide. So Maslama was an Umayyad prince and a very well-respected Arab general during this time. He led several campaigns against the Byzantine Empire, but most of his fame is credited to the siege of 718, which he led the Arab army in. And as I promised you like 45 seconds ago, we are now back on to geography of Constantinople. So now in front of you, you should see a map of Constantinople from 718 AD. Now when we look at the geography of Constantinople, as I said earlier, it is a peninsula surrounded by water on three sides. Now we discussed earlier that a peninsula leads for its advantages in the world of trade, but it also offers great protections in terms of defenses. An army could only come from one direction, and that one direction would be by way of land. Any other attack would have to come from the backside, and that would be by way of naval warfare. Now during this time, most of siege warfare took place on foot, and the navy was only used for transportation and support for the most part. But the terrain surrounding the capital city also complicated any plans to lead siege on foot because of the Balkan mountain range that surrounded the area. Now the topic of geography has been discussed thoroughly by Boot and Parker and their understandings of the advancement of technology and warfare. We've discussed this thoroughly throughout our time in this course, and that's why I felt like it was applicable to add to this video. Now there is no denying that geography was an incredibly important aspect of the siege of 718 in Constantinople because of the way that it has been studied so thoroughly ever since. But I would like to bring light to another factor, a technological advancement that came about during this time, and that's called Greek fire. Now, Greek fire was an incredibly important asset to the Byzantine navy, and it was especially important during the siege of 718, where it was used to dismember the Arab naval fleet. It originated in roughly 670 in the Roman Empire, and it was used to set fire to other ships. It can be associated with what we think of today as the modern-day flamethrower, and it was the first of its kind. The fascinating part about Greek fire is they could be used in naval warfare, and when the ship was lit on fire, it would actually continue to burn even though it was in the water. And so it would incinerate fleets for the Byzantine Empire, and this was a major advantage that they carried into battle with them. Alright, so why does that really matter? I mean, they're down a couple of ships, it's not that big of a deal, they can bounce back, right? Wrong. So for one, the blockade has been so dismantled by the Byzantine navy that ships can now pass through. So the Arabs do not have the blockade that they originally had, and they hope to eliminate the Byzantines' ability to go in and resupply troops with food, water, and weapons, such forth. And so they've completely lost this advantage that they had gained early in the battle. Now secondly, the Arabs had in preparation for this burned all the crops in Thrace, which was the surrounding area, and they did this to prevent the Byzantines from being able to provide food for the harsh winter that would soon be upon them. But what they actually didn't take into account was that they had in turn ruined any chance that they would be able to resupply themselves as the Arab people. And so they didn't really think this one all the way through. So now the Arabs were forced to resort to eating roots, leaves. They even had to eat the camels that they had brought with them. And by the time that they actually made it out of the harsh winter, they were so weak and frail that they couldn't even think about continuing to fight. The blockade had also been pulled back, which allowed for the Byzantine army to be resupplied this whole time. By the time that the Arab supplies arrived, it was too late, and the siege was just out the door. The Arab troops were forced to withdraw from the land in August.
Are you going to talk at all about the actual lines or strategies or fortresses or like the fortress itself in this video, or are you just going to talk about geography and nature?
Oh. So, now we can answer your question. So Constantinople, as we spoke of earlier in the video, is a peninsula, which means that there was only one way in and one way out in terms of walking by way of land. So that one area was incredibly, I don't want to say easy, but it was much easier to defend for the Byzantine army. And so they had fortresses outside of the city that would protect and set borders, but they could also focus most of the army on that area and leave the backside for the naval ships. And so this really played to be an advantage for the Byzantine army. And it went to show over the course of history why Constantinople was so difficult to siege time and time again. But why is this important? Why does this matter? What is the deal with this in the course of history that follows? Well, for one, the first thing that comes to my mind is all of a sudden we've seen a weapon here called Greek fire that just eliminated and dismembered an entire naval fleet. All of a sudden we see a weapon that can be used and continues to incinerate even when it's on the water. I mean, it's cited in here in this book called Greek Fire that it can only be put out by the use of sand. And so all of a sudden the Byzantines have this great naval weapon that they can use to protect this capital city of Constantinople. Well, that's number one. Two, we see that a land siege went absolutely nowhere, and that the fortress of Constantinople held strong. And so it's important to realize that in building an empire, the number one thing that everyone else wants to see is you fall. They want to have what you have. And here Constantinople is no different, as the capital city of Byzantium. And so they understand that they've taken that on, but at the same time they've developed a weapon here from the Eastern Roman Empire. And they've proved that it works. And so this is going to change the way that we see naval warfare from every day going forward. All of a sudden it's going to be applied around the world to all different navies. And I think that that's the major takeaway from what we've studied here. That's the major takeaway from what we've learned here. Thank you to all my viewers out there. I really appreciate your support and you guys checking out my new video today. Please do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time.